Hello there, my friend. Welcome to the fire. We got a interesting story here about a DM that used their home game as material for their book, without their players' knowledge. I discover I'm a character in a book, r/RPG horror stories, posted by Jack-Throw. This happened 5 or 6 years ago, but I just discovered this subreddit, so here we go. I had just moved to a new town to start a new job. I didn't know anyone here, but I quickly made friends with a coworker as we had similar tastes in movies and games. I'm only there a few weeks before he mentions that some of his friends are starting up a game of Pathfinder and asked if I was interested in joining. I accepted and we begin playing about a week later. I'm going to skip over most of the actual game stuff and who all the characters were, since it was pretty standard and not really relevant to the actual story. Group of adventurers meet up to form a team and take on various mercenary jobs. There was an overarching plot where a lot of trouble seemed to be caused by the same evil druid, and we were heading towards a big confrontation with him. No real red flags from any of the players or the DM. Everyone is pretty cool. There's a fun, casual, jokey atmosphere around the table. The DM is a bit on the turbo nerd side, but not in an obviously creepy way like a lot of the stories here. The DM wasn't too railroady. The plot definitely had a direction, and we usually had a set objective, but we were pretty free to act within that framework. The game came to a screeching halt when one of the players privately linked us to a story on a self-publishing site. This may not be the best term. It was set up that you get the first page or two free, and then you pay a few dollars for each chapter after that. The story is clearly based on the campaign we're playing. A lot of shared character names and the plot points are the same. Now, if you read the title of this post, you're probably not too surprised by this revelation. But here's where it gets weird. This is one of those modern day people get pulled into a fantasy world type stories. So, not only were our characters featured, but the players were as well. You know how when you're playing a game, everyone is aware of game conventions and pop culture. For example, the party was trying to escape a trap where the walls are closing in, and someone made a reference to the trash compactor scene in Star Wars. That line made it into the book. You might be thinking that this is all pretty weird, but not really a horror story. The plot of the story switched between the fantasy world and the real world. The characters would go on magical adventures fully aware of everything that was happening, but then pop back to the regular world to go about their day-to-day life completely unaware that anything supernatural was happening. All the adventures were remembered as a game they were playing until the next time they played again. The creepy thing is that there was lots of real-world drama and character building that was clearly based on the lives of the real people in our group. Breakups, job losses, and my own recent move that happened in real life were reflected in the fictional versions of us. A lot of this was stuff I didn't even know about, since we didn't get into a lot of personal stuff during the games. We eventually learned that the writer was mining our social media for potential plot hooks. Reactions in chat were flipping between shock, amusement, and anger as everyone read further into the story. We confronted the DM at the next game and he tried to deny it. First, he said it was probably a coincidence, but there were just too many details that were exactly the same. Even the things that were different was stuff like changing a player's name from Mike to Matt. Next, he claimed that it wasn't him, and one of us must be the writer, which I guess was maybe possible, but the way the story was set up, you'd have to have the DM's knowledge of what was going to happen to write it like that. This is going to sound made up, but he actually pitched the idea that maybe there was some truth to the story and some sort of supernatural retelling of our adventures was happening. I suspect this was a future plot point or framing device for his book. We quickly shot this down as well. There wasn't a lot of fallout. We demanded he take the story down. He resisted at first, but relented when one of the players threatened to sue. The game stopped immediately. I decided to take a break from tabletop for a while and lost contact with most of the group. The co-worker that brought me into the game continued to be a work friend, but without the weekly game, we sort of drifted apart until I moved again a few years later. I think he still hung out with the DM occasionally, but it definitely hurt their friendship. In the end, no real harm was done, and honestly, it might have been really cool if it didn't come with a side of cyberstalking. But it was definitely weird to read a character based on you describing your internal reaction to things that had actually happened to you. Wow. Just wow. Ugh, yeah. The DM really should have gotten the consent of his players before he did something like that, especially if he was making money off of them. Business-wise, that's pretty shady. And in all honesty, if he actually did ask for permission, he actually might have gotten it because, hey, that could have been pretty interesting. Or heck, they could have even worked together and maybe developed some sort of actual play stream. Which, by the way, a little shameless plug here, check out my Facebook and Twitter to find out about the APs that I'm involved in. But anyway, that whole cyber stalking thing that the DM did to mine for material, that was crossing the line. And I gotta say, the whole ridiculousness that he claimed that how it might have been some kind of supernatural phenomenon, that was kind of a WTF moment. Yeah, at that point, the DM definitely knew he was caught red-handed and just was desperate to try anything to keep his little fan fiction afloat. But hey, at least they weren't isekai'd by Truckcoon. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you want to see more content like this. And would you kindly follow the socials posted in the description below. As always, be good, be great, be awesome.